For the first time in their lives, a group of rescued chimps glimpse the outside world. What a bizarre moment. Here are some rescued animals who have never seen the outside world before. Watch these animals being freed in the wild after being rescued. Dairy cows. Cow milk is one of the most popular farmyard products, with over 217 billion pounds sold in the United States each year. Even while alternatives such as almond milk are becoming more popular, there is still a large demand. And in order to meet these demands, there must be a large number of cows that can be milked on a regular basis. The animal's life quality changes depending on how vigorously this is done. Some are left to wander the fields, which provides greater milk and is considerably more humane to them. Others are housed in indoor cages on concrete flooring, which boosts yield and makes cleaning much simpler. But this raises obvious ethical considerations. Cows housed in these circumstances are put there while they're young and never get the chance to go outside. This implies that if they're ever released outdoors, they're introduced to a completely different existence, one that's a lot better suitable to live things. This video shows what happened when a herd of milk cows were finally let out of the barn and began bouncing for pleasure. Horses run free. When animals are maintained as pets, they rely totally on their humans to provide them with everything they need to survive. Unfortunately, not everyone takes this obligation as seriously as they should, and it can result in the animal being critically unwell to the point of where if no one steps in, they will die. That's almost what happened to two horses named Fleur and Tamarisk, who got extremely underweight after going weeks without nourishment. Fortunately, the Easy Horse Care Rescue Center was able to take them in before it was too late and put them on a diet plan to get them back to a healthy weight. The horses were too sick to leave the indoor enclosure at the time. This video was shot before they were completely healthy. You can tell how relieved they were to be back outside in the fresh air. They were brought to a pasture alongside 6 other horses that had been recently rescued by the center. They all appeared to be on the mend. Luckily, small spotted genet cats. Rangers discovered 3 abandoned newborns in the Sabi Sands Reserve near the Kruger National Park in South Africa in 2018. And if they hadn't been taken into care, there's little way they would have survived for long. The Hood Spirit Endangered Species Center watched after them, hand-feeding them the milk and weaning them onto their natural food. During their early years, they were confined in a tiny enclosure. However, the facility's goal is to educate creatures like these with the abilities they need to survive in the wild. So we see them in this video during a soft release at Camp Jabulani. The bigger area where they were introduced is still gated, allowing personnel to continue feeding them. But many weeks later, the doors were unlocked so they could begin to explore the surrounding area by themselves without limitation. The goal was that they'd learn to hunt for themselves and no longer require the aid of the institution. Experimental rabbits. Rabbits are one of the most commonly utilized laboratory animals, not because they are related to humans in any way, but because they are docile, feeding costs less, they may be readily confined, and they reproduce fast. To allow tests to be conducted under controlled settings, rabbits are kept in cages in sterile labs and never allowed to go outside or enjoy a normal life. A bunch of rabbits were rescued from a recently shuttered facility and promptly brought to a neighboring field to begin their new lives of freedom. This is the first time they've been outside of a cage, and simply touching the soil beneath their paws must have been an incredible sensation. It's also the first time they've been allowed to engage with each other without barriers, demonstrating how crucial it is for them to be able to socialize in groups. Pangolins. Pangolins, a critically endangered species of scaled nocturnal mammals, spend the most of their time climbing trees. But their population numbers are under threat due to international demand for them in medicine, as pets, and for meat. It's so bad that they're the world's most illegally traded animals. For this reason, various rescue facilities are committed to nursing and taking care of ones that have been in distress. In 2018, the group posted a video of what happened after they returned a pangolin back to the wild. It had been rescued from captivity after being seized by poachers for shipment overseas and was in critical condition. However, after several months of nursing and care, it was ready to be released back into its forest habitat, where it would hopefully be secure from poachers for the remainder of its life. Pet garter snake. In this video, a snake enthusiast noticed a garter snake that had been attacked by another animal, and instead of letting nature take its course, he took it home to help nurse it back to health. When he brought it in, it was fairly young, and he took care of it for several months before it fully regained its strength, even though he provided it with a safe place to heal in. Nothing compares to being outside, and you can see how happy the snake is when it is finally ready to be freed. It takes a swim in the stream before crawling away into the vegetation. Injured squirrel. This squirrel was hit by a car, breaking both of its legs. But a local charity was able to offer immediate medical attention, and it was soon on its path to recovery. It was kept indoors in a glass tank for 6 months, despite being given as much comfort as possible. The animal must have spent the most of its time there, hoping it could return to the great outdoors. If you need any more confirmation that this was the case, just look at what happens when the cage is eventually unlocked. It leaps out instantly and rushes straight towards the tree line. Rhinos. Unfortunately, rhinos are one of the most often poached animal species on the planet. As a result, they are now critically endangered. There's a larger consequence to the death of an individual rhino than it may seem, since there's also the possible knock-on impact of what occurs if they're taking care for babies, as is what happened in the instance of Gertji and Matimba. These baby rhinos were discovered sobbing in the wild after their mother was murdered by poachers. They were left behind because their horns were not big enough to be valuable. Fortunately, instead of having to fend for themselves, they were taken up by a rescue center and cared for the following 5 years. They were ultimately released back into the wild, and seeing them take their first steps filled everyone engaged in their care with excitement. Tigers. Poachers murdered a mother in 2011, leaving her 3 cubs orphaned. When the International Fund for Animal Welfare learned about them, they stepped in to work with partners in eastern Russia to locate them a secure home to live. While they were supplied with food and the opportunity to recover from their ordeal, the plan was always to return them to the wild once they were healthy enough to hunt and care for themselves. After 3 years, it was finally time. They were put into containers and transported to their new home, after which the gates were unlocked one by one. The tigers were ecstatic at their release, but they fled as quickly as they could before settling down, and proving that efforts to rehabilitate animals like these are well worth it. And finally, number 1. Loggerhead turtle. This loggerhead was found drifting offshore from southern Martin County, Florida, where one of its sides was more buoyant than the other, which made it hard for it to swim correctly. It was hoisted onto a rescue boat and transported to SeaWorld Orlando, where professionals assisted in treating the animal's injuries and nursing it back to health. After a few months, it was time to return home. Workers hauled the 135-pound turtle back to Hobie Sound Beach. As they drop it, it is almost immobile. It begins to go towards the water as soon as it sees it. After sliding into the waves, it may paddle with its massive flippers before submerging again. So that's the end of the video. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and press the notification bell so you never miss out on our next videos. Until the next video, take care.